This segment is brought to you by St. Martin and Bourke. Know your rights.
Hello and welcome to this edition of Bayou Time. I'm your host, Keith Weissite, licensed clinical social worker with Terrebonne Home Care. Very glad you're joining us. However you may be joining us, we appreciate it. And we're always very glad to have with us State Representative Jessica Domangue. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right. Again, District 53, and very glad to have you back. I know y'all were in session and lots were going on, but let's start off with some of the good things. There have been some positive things. Let's start off with some updates on DOTD.
Yeah, no, definitely. And look, I want to thank you for having me here, and want to thank your viewers and supporters. I mean, it's always great to come on your show and just, shed light on things that are happening in the state and in our area. We did have a very, very productive session. And I think it's important that we talk about that and talk about the strength that we have in our Bayou delegation. We have one of the strongest delegations in Baton Rouge. And so we had some big wins for our area. And so just want to kind of highlight that. And I'm so thankful to be able to work with my colleagues every day. I guess the big
kind of focal point
right now. The thing that's on everybody's mind right now is our bridges, our road construction, and DOTD. It's been, kind of the thorn in everybody's side, and I want to thank our parish president, Jason Bazeron. He's been doing a great job, putting out his updates every day about kind of where we are with the bridges. He put one out yesterday talking about Boudreaux Canal. It was pushed back about a week. These things are to be expected. It's not a month. It's not a year. They're still working.
Right.
I was down there the other day. The barge just got down there. They're still, on top of it. So things are still moving in the right direction. The other thing I've seen, and look, there's been a lot of frustration coming out, especially on social media, about now the road construction.
Right.
These road projects were planned in the Dove administration.
Yeah.
So that's how long these things happen. I actually remember making a post about the projects coming out whenever I was on the council, because it was in the district I represented,
right.
both sides, Park and Main of 24 right. on both sides of the intercoastal. And I remember, making that announcement they were going to do from Howard Avenue all the way.
Right.
And so, that was 2 years ago right. that we announced that. It's, kind of a crazy time and crazy turn of events that's all happening at the same time.
Right.
But at least we're getting some progress in our area.
And a lot of those are state projects.
Yeah.
Those are things that state money is coming in to help do these things. And we just happen to have bridges out at the same time, some state bridges, some local bridges. It's just, that's how it's kind of falling.
Yeah, so,
we're getting work done.
We're getting
right?
work done.
Sometimes we got to slow down and move forward.
Right, exactly. And, we've all driven on our roads. We know how terrible they are. Yeah. I mean, and is it a headache now? Absolutely.
Right.
However, we're all working together.
Right.
We've got a great team on the state level and the local level to be able to get these things done. And so we're going to start seeing some progress. I do want to talk a little bit about, some of the reforms that we did in DOTD, because that's another, people are like, we need to overhaul DOTD. Well, Governor Jeff Landry did that.
That's exactly right.
And I put this up. This is kind of a highlight and a snapshot of our DOTD reforms that happened this year.
Okay.
Actually, if you look back on social media, Jeff Landry had a big meeting with all the heads of DOTD, and Cameron Henry and Philip DeVilliers in January of this year, and said, we got to change the culture.
Right. Nice.
We all recognize that there was so much waste in that department and that we needed to overhaul it. So that's what we did, is we completely overhauled the department. We put new standards, transparency, and accountability, and decentralized decision-making from DOTD's headquarters in Baton Rouge, and gives local offices the power to put things in place. And that's what we want as a local option. You know, we also create the Louisiana Highway Construction Office to ensure more efficient construction and repairs, and cutting the bureaucrats and empowering the engineers and road builders.
Nice.
What the other part of this that's going to be really interesting, and something that, you know, we saw, of course, in our area is, you know, a lot of these piecemeal bridge constructions, we know it doesn't work. So what we've started is bridge bundles. And so if we have to build bridges across the state, we're going to build several at the same time. And so we invested about $700 million this past session and the session before, to be able to put into infrastructure. And so we're actually going to have, in our area, we were fortunate enough to get one bridge, but the 9th Avenue Bridge, I know back from my council days, people were saying, you know, they've been promising us a new bridge at 9th Avenue forever. And so we're going to get that bridge. It's going to be part of our bridge bundle. But just know that we've recognized the deficiencies in DOTD, and we have worked so hard. And Glenn Leday, which you know the name, he was CPRA director. He's now the secretary over DOTD. He started at June 19th. I mean, he's
brand new.
Yeah, brand new. Look, he was just appointed the very last day of session. The governor appointed him. And so he's been boots on the ground. I'm actually meeting with him next week. And so we're really excited to be working with him.
I love it. Great updates. We're going to continue with that.
Okay.
So Jessica's going to stick around. We want you to do the same. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back right here on Bayou Time.
This segment was brought to you by St. Martin and Bourke. Know your rights.
Hello and welcome back to this edition of Bayou Time. Again, your host, Keith Whiteside, licensed clinical social worker with Terrebonne Home Care. Very glad you're joining us. However you may be joining us, we appreciate it. And always got to have back with us State Representative District 53, Jessica Domangue. Jessica, thanks for being here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And so, you know, it was really interesting. As you were talking last segment, it got me thinking that, you know, I don't want people to assume anything about what happens. The delays that are happening in some of these projects are natural delays. They're not anything to do with not being aligned with our local and our state representatives. Even with the governor, everybody's been on the same page and everybody's working really well together to move forward. That's one of the other positives that have come out of the session, right?
Most definitely, most definitely. I mean, you know, as soon as we knew that we had an issue, we were at the DOTD headquarters having meetings all day. Same thing is with your local representatives as well. I mean, it's, you know, of course, there's been issues, but everybody's doing their part, and everybody's got a role to play, and we're doing that really, really well. You know, hats off to Senator Fessy as well. He's been pushing as hard as he can on his end, and so, you know, everybody has been doing what they can. It's just we are really kind of in this really unfortunate circumstance that, I mean, you know, if anybody won a lottery ticket of worst possible outcome for a parish, we win. But you know, the end is going to be so amazing because we're going to have all this brand new infrastructure, which is going to be really wonderful.
Yeah, and listen, our own Jason Sereny this morning got to cross a bridge that nobody's been able to cross in 4 years. And so he was able to drive through Berg and over a bridge that finally is done. They got a little bit more work to do, and they got a little bit of a delay getting the pole that was on back order. So the red lights will be in there, and they'll be able to do that sooner than later. But this is good news. We're moving forward, and those kinds of improvements make a difference for economic development.
Most definitely, most definitely. You know, and that was another big initiative for Governor Landry was economic development. And if you've been watching some of, you know, some of the positive things that's been coming out of Baton Rouge, I mean, we're looking at a $75 billion investment in capital investments in the entire state. Just, you know, these big economic development drivers for areas, you know, like Pineville that have no economy. And so this is actually life-changing for the state. You know, he appointed Susan Bourgeois, our LED secretary, and she has done a phenomenal job as far as reinventing and reimagining what that department can do. And so they've been very instrumental as far as economic development and just looking at places where we can have really high impact jobs here in the state of Louisiana. And so, we absolutely congratulate them, and then on a local level, we now see the Chamber and SCIA and TEDA and the newly formed CoLab all working together. And so, for a while you'd see things and it was a bit disjointed. And so now you really see everyone's moving in the same direction. And that's been based on leadership, as far as the leadership with TEDA and the leadership with SCIA. I mean, they're just doing such a wonderful job as far as bringing everybody together and moving things in the right direction. There was some really interesting bills that came out and some great initiatives that we were really excited about. There was a one door. It was basically we were reorganizing the Department of Children and Family Services, which I know is very near and dear to your heart. And we moved Children and Family Services under the Louisiana workforce.
Wow.
So that
so smart.
So that could be much more efficient and effective. And so, my dear friends, Stephanie Baralt and Rep. Kim Carver, they were able to get that bill passed and signed. And so that was a huge piece of legislation that came out. And then the other thing that we're really excited to do is to bring home some real capital investments to our area.
Okay.
And so we're going to bring home some pretty big numbers. And so we're excited about that. We have $11.6 million going to the new Pelican vessel at Lumcon.
Wow.
And we also have $1.6 million for the Marine Campus Phase 2 at Lumcon. And we see Lumcon as such a gem for our area and such a great hub for economic development. And the state also recognized that. And so that was an easy ask to be able to bring those dollars in. Also our levee district, they were kind of living in a tent building for a while. And so we have $1.5 million to put them a storm hardened building. It's going to be, they've already purchased the property. It's going to be past the air base. That way they can be in a Cat 5 building and be close to the action where they need to be as far as getting their people out if we have a problem with one of the levees. So that's going to be really wonderful as well. The port's getting another $9 million as well. And then we're pretty excited also. If you remember back in the rec reform days, we talked about having an adaptive playground, adaptive ball field. And so Rep. Zarang and I were able to bring an additional $500,000 for Rec 2-3 to be able to go finish that park. And so we're absolutely excited. And I think we're going to come on with Rec 2-3 later to really talk about that. But that's so exciting, especially, for children with disabilities in our area. And it's going to be a hub also because there are no parks in the entire region. And so it's going to be a regional investment as well, as far as for children. And so we're really, really excited to get that done.
Man, I got to tell you, that's a way to kind of even the playing field, if you will, so that we can honor those families that we know struggle so much that have a child that's otherly abled. And so we appreciate that.
Absolutely.
All right, Jessica, we got to take another short break. We thank you for sticking with us. We ask you to do the same. And so we'll be right back here with Jessica Domangue when we continue right here on Bayou Time.
This segment was brought to you by Terrebonne Ford. Built Ford tough.
Hello and welcome back to this edition of Bayou Time. Again, your host, Keith Whiteside, licensed clinical social worker with Terrebonne Home Care. Very glad you are joining us, and also very glad to have back with us State Representative, District 53, Jessica Domangue. Jessica, thanks for being with us.
Thank you very much.
You got it. So look, we talked about all the positive things coming out of the session, talked about some of the bridges, talked about that economic development, all the really good things that are happening. I know insurance continues to be a big, important subject. Let's talk a little bit about some of these changes that we've learned.
Yeah, definitely. And insurance was, the talk of the town when we got to Baton Rouge. I mean, because you had the governor versus the insurance commissioner, and everybody felt kind of, drugged to one side or the other. But at the end, we had some really good progress. And, with anything, it's just one more step. I mean, we have to continue, obviously, but we did pass one of the biggest tort reform packages in the history of the state of Louisiana, because we all know that the frivolous lawsuits are really what's driving up our costs.
Right.
We saw a lot of bills pertaining to auto insurance and tort reform, knowing that if we fix auto and tort reform, then homeowners is going to come back because you're going to know, and the companies are going to know, okay, we can now invest in Louisiana because it's a business-friendly place.
Right.
And so that's really was the focus of it. And I'll highlight a couple of the bills that came out just, to kind of give a little backup. Rep 431 by Rep Emily Chenevier. This ensures that if someone is 51% or more at fault in an accident, they're not entitled to recover damages. Okay.
Oh, wow.
So that means, look, if you're not really hurt, then you don't really go sue, right? I mean, you don't say, oh, I got, and so
and
that's
especially if you're at fault.
Exactly.
If you're at fault, you can't sue.
Exactly.
I love
right.
I love that bill.
Yeah. All right. HB 434 by Jason DeWitt, which raises the threshold that an uninsured motorist can recover damages from $15,000 to $100,000 for bodily injury and $25,000 to $100,000 for property damage. So once again, putting a cap, right? We're not saying that you can go in and get all this money.
Right. Or have it drag on forever with that raising costs.
Yep.
Gotcha.
HB 450 by Rep. Michael Mellering, which overturns the Housley presumption and institutes sticker standards on proving if an injury truly is a result of an accident. So what's Housley? Housley is a legal presumption that if you had an injury or illness after an accident, the court automatically assumed that the cause was by the accident. Oh. So, you broke your foot, right, playing football, but then you get in an accident and then the court automatically assumed it was because of the accident, but really it's because you had this previous injury. Yeah. So that's what they're doing. And so that was a really, really great bill.
Yeah, because you may have broken your foot on the way to the hospital and get in an accident, and then all of a sudden that's a presumption. So it removes that assumption. Yeah. I love that. Go ahead.
HB 549 requires insurers to offer discounts for dashboard cameras on commercial vehicles, which is really great for them.
Yep.
Senate Bill 231 by Mike Reese brings transparency into the courtroom by allowing judges and juries to see medical expenses that were actually paid by insurance or Medicare, not the inflated amount that was billed. So if you think about it, and I tell people this story, and I've been very transparent with my cancer diagnosis and kind of where I was. I had a huge surgery last summer. Right. My bill was $2 million. But what the insurance actually paid was about $20,000. So if I was in an accident, then I could sue and say and try to get the $2 million, which is really the inflated insurance cost and not what is actually being paid. So what they're saying now is you can only sue for what's being paid out. So if I was in an accident, I would only be able to get the $20,000, not the $2 million. If that kind of makes right.
Wow, and look, we're talking how many times over that cost of the $20,000 versus $2 million. Great analogy, by the way. Right. Helps drive that home.
Right, absolutely. They have some stuff about uniform roofing standards. There was a lot about the Fortify Roof program and getting some incentives for Fortify roofs as well. And there were several bills about that. I want to talk a little bit about one bill that really was under the radar until the very end, and it was Jacob Bro's stated value bill. And what this bill said is that your insurance company may write a policy on the stated value, not what the insurance company assumes your house to be, right? Oh. And so my house, I live on Central, we pay $210,000 for my house, so it's worth about maybe 250 to 300. Right. However, my insurance company makes me insure my house for $450,000. So what stated value is that you're actually going to pay the appraised price and not what the price that the insurance company thinks, because my house in California is probably worth $3 million, right? But here it's worth about $250,000. So that was a great bill. He had a lot of flack from insurance companies, and the only way he could get it passed was to change the the shall to a may.
Okay.
So
Then not
instead
only
of
shall, they may.
they
Okay.
shall, then they may, you
Right.
know?
Gotcha.
So insurance companies are going to have the option. However, and that bill was signed this Monday, which it went in effect Monday. So I encourage the people of Terrebonne Parish to call your local broker and shop around and see if there are any agencies that are offering this
doing that.
policy, because I imagine they're going to start.
Gotcha. Jessica, great updates. Thanks so very much. We appreciate it. All right, guys, that'll do it for this particular segment and this Bayou Time, but don't go anywhere. A whole lot more right here on HTV.
This segment was brought to you by South Louisiana Bank. It's better when we bank together.